Good afternoon, it's Shed from Shed All Over the Page. I want to talk about RV refrigerators. My RV is a 1998 model. It has a Norcold 9182, which is a two-way refrigerator. It's designed to run on LP or 120. Still needs 12 volts to control the panel, but that's how the unit works. I think apparently you've got some out there that will actually do the heating and cooling or the cooling part on 12. I'm not sure how the third function works. But these things are just very simple. It's an ammonia refrigerant system. So they heat up ammonia, and in that process it causes chilling. And that's the stuff that they use in a lot of these great big like ice cream manufacturing plants is a ammonia refrigerant system. I remember we had a place that made ice cream, and we used to go up and do hazmat exercises with them because the line system, we asked them one time, they said, well, we got a 1,000-gallon ammonia tank, but there's 27,000 gallons of ammonia in the line set. So if they ever had a leak, we had a problem. So we used to do training drills with this place every year. It was a good company. Unfortunately, it got closed down at some point. Anyhow, now that got off that tangent. So we had this refrigerator, and every now and then you had to do it got where it would not cool, and you'd have to burp it. So you got to pull this whole unit out, set it on the ground, flip it upside down, and the ammonia would run down, and you put it back in and it would start cooling again. And my understanding is the steel piping that the ammonia's in, over time flakes of rust break down inside the pipe, and eventually those flakes will, due to the cold, will clump up almost like a block of ice, and it prevents the ammonia from circulating, which doesn't let it cool. So then the circuit board started acting up. So I went and looked online. I got to quit using SO as a pause filler. I went online and started looking, and I found this circuit board. It was on Amazon at the time. It was 633292. It was a service kit from Norcold. Didn't know if it would work. Went online, kept doing some searches, and found a person that said, hey, and he was asking the same questions I was asking. Said he installed it because it was $50, because they made some aftermarket kits, but they were really, really expensive. And this one was fairly cheap. It was like $50 on Amazon. So he bought one, installed it, said it worked perfectly. So I purchased one based on that guy's comment and hooked it up, and it would turn the unit on, but that was where it stopped. You couldn't adjust the temperature. You couldn't change it from LP over to LP, and it kept giving a door alarm because the way it was designed. And what it boils down to is the way the wiring harnesses work. And the power feeds, the circuit board is outside, inside a compartment on the back side of this refrigerator, and the power feeds into here. Now, example, this is a 7-wire that goes to a 12-wire that goes to a 16-wire. So if you think about it, I'll show this picture here as an example. Turn the hood light on. And this is the schematic that came with the new kit. Focus. I think it's going to focus. There, finally. All right, if you notice right here on number 4 goes to 6, which is violet. And then you see violet goes to 5. No, violet goes up to 4. And you notice nothing goes past 4. So the way the wiring harness worked with kit 633292 was, it went from the panel and into the wiring harness but terminated. In that case, it didn't go to the circuit board. Well, the problem was the circuit board for the 9182, which you got to understand, only thing I'm using is the circuit the control board and the circuit board. So in between them's another set of wires that runs through the refrigerator that I don't want to try to tear out. Well, that wire fed all the way over to the circuit board. And in this case, the way it worked out was there was a violet wire that showed not to be in use that my wiring harness caused it to be in use. It created a redundant ground. So coming from the circuit board, I cut the violet wire, and then everything worked, and I mean worked like a charm. You could adjust the temperature, and it actually caused the refrigerator to cycle. We always had a problem with this thing freezing up. And after that, it cycles properly. The thermistor, which is this thing here, the cooling coils, it would cycle through, defrost itself, and this thing's worked great ever since. Now the funny part is I was looking it up to make this video, and 633292, this was in 2021, it's discontinued. And it was replaced by 637779, and now that was discontinued. And the note says time to get a new refrigerator. Really? Still works. Anyhow, what you run into with these case is like my old circuit, my old control panel clips in to these holes right here. This board screwed in. And the guy talked about drilling into this, and I started to drill in it, and I went, hold on a minute. Well, behind this is called a divider, and it's basically a piece of metal that heats up to keep this from frosting up, so you don't ever want to drill into this. And now, if they've got preset holes in it that are threaded, that's one thing. But I started to drill it, and I'm like, well, as soon as I went through the plastic, I hit something kind of hard, and I went, wait a minute. So started doing some research, and that's called a divider, and basically it's like a heat strip that keeps this from icing up in here where your control panels are. So the long of this is these things are very simple, and what I had to do was trace a lot of wires, and you had to mark every hole, and they were color coded, and even the newer boards use basically the same colors. It was fairly simple to do. But what you noticed was pin 4 would go into pin 4, then go over pin 11 in one diagram, but the reality is it would go to pin 4 and maybe go to pin 13. So it took a little bit of chasing. But I wanted to point that out. It's unfortunate that we buy these campers, and boy, these things are maintenance dadgum nightmares to keep them up if you use them. If they just sit here, nope. Because I can tell you I've replaced the circuit board here, the air conditioning unit, the thermostats that control the water heater, electric and gas, propane, it's got both. I've replaced those multiple times. Plumbing underneath it where it's, frozen, and they put a valve right next to a piece of framework, so you have to cut the pipe out. You can't replace the gaskets in the valve because of the layout. And I can give you an example. My camper is overweight for the tires, dead empty. So if you look at the schematic for the weight on the tires, this camper is overweight and there's nothing in it. So by the time we put all our stuff in it to go camping, it's heavy. So we've been blowing tires every time we go on trips. I carry a big automotive jack. I carry an impact gun with me, an electric impact gun, and I carry 2 spares. And so my next time I'm going to change out, I think I'm going to go to the 14 plies. A little long story. So like if you look at this thing here, I cut out the tabs off my old control board, my old circuit, control panel, and just pop riveted them in so that they would snap in place. So what I'm saying is if you can get a kit out there, it should be easy even if you chase the wires around. In my case, what it was a redundant ground coming back into the panel. It was causing the panel to act up. Cut one wire, everything worked great. But apparently in 4 or 5 years now, they've discontinued the board I got and discontinued the board that replaced it. So just a little talk. Shed off page.